Good afternoon. So, Maserati, still on my mind. One thing that always comes up when you're talking about a good place to start with a brand, or with, if you're a new hobbyist, a new slot car racer, what car should you start with if you're going to think about tuning? I think this one's got a lot of potential. First, it's a new car, so you're going to be able to get this for from any slotted dealer in the U.S. and in Europe as well. It's got something really good going for it, the guide lead. The guide lead is really crucially important. Well, there's two things that are crucially important. There's a slot car racer in Spain, Miguel Gubianes. He talked about triangles. There's two triangles that are really important. The first triangle is the guide lead. That's from the pivot point of the guide to the center of the back axle. And this, as you can see, is really long. That makes this a good, stable car. And then there's another triangle, so it's from here to here and here to here. See, that's one triangle. Another triangle is from here to here, from the center of the pivot point to the center of the front axle. The further forward this guide is, the more stable this car is going to be. The more, especially in the corners, well, in my opinion, in the corners, that's where it's going to be a little more stable. So this car's got a lot going for it. So if you're thinking about making buy of your first slotted car, this is a good one to get, because I think there's an awful lot of potential here. The other day at Clem's, in my other video, I did just, we did kind of a grab-ass video of me driving the car around the track. I put the aluminum wheels on this car. I've changed it to quick slicks, of course, because as you can see, I'm a quick slicks guy. And that's really it. I loosened the body just a little tiny bit to get a little bit of body float that smooths out the car really nicely. And I'm going to talk about something else here that's also going to smooth out the car. And they're going to be really simple upgrades you can do to start with. This is for, you know, guys that are just starting in the hobby, or kids. If you want to get started tuning up a slotted car, I really don't think you can go wrong here. I really don't. This is a really good car, and I think it's got a ton of potential. So I would encourage you to see if the stock tires work well on your track. I never like the idea of hearing people that are in the hobby answer questions from people who want to get in the hobby, and the first thing that comes out a lot of the time is, okay, well, I want to get this car, how do I make it go fast? And then someone in the hobby already tells them to replace essentially everything under the car. As a manufacturer, that really annoys you, because cars can be enjoyed as they are. If it's a stock car with magnets on a plastic track and that's what you're after to enjoy the hobby, then you can enjoy that. And there's no reason to replace everything on a car. That's just, it's crap, and it scares people away from the hobby. I think it does the hobby a massive disservice. So how can you tune the car that you have? Well, tires are a cheap replacement. You don't necessarily need them, especially if you got the Polycar track. This is really nice grippy track. So with the magnet especially, this car is going to go like heck on stock track because it's super grippy. So you're not going to need to replace anything. If, like me, you race on a track with a group and they race mostly silicone tires, then you're going to want to replace the tires. So that's a really cheap thing that you can do to get extra speed out of the car. The other thing you can do, and this is not buying anything, you loosen up the car, loosen up the body screws, on the car, which in this case are right there, and then two right here. You just take about a turn out, and then you get, I hope you can hear that little bit of rattle from the mic. You can get a little bit of body float. You can see this moving a little bit. You get a little body chassis float. Now this car is interesting because this car, the nose of this car sits on the front splitter. So you're going to have a nice smooth connection here because the body edge is going to lay flat on top of the splitter, which means that it's not going to catch when the body's loosened. The body may catch around the edges of the chassis. So if you wanted to, and this isn't something you have to do, because there's quite a bit of space actually right here. You can see a little, well, maybe you can't see it, but there's a little bit of side-to-side play. So there's a little bit of a gap around the edge here. There's a little tiny bit of a gap, so you can get a little bit of body float, and that's already going to make the car a little faster once you loosen it up. The other thing you can do, and this is something to start to buy, and this is not a hard thing to do, trust me. Screws. This doesn't sound really exciting, but these screws are probably the single best tuning tip that I do to every car now. These are the CH51. These are the small head screws. And what these are is there's less thread. It doesn't go the whole way up to the top of the head of the screw. So you get a nice area in here where the shank of the screw is nice and smooth. Well, what does that give you? That gives you a nice smooth pod float. And if you can hear, it's a little crunchy. I don't know if you can hear it or not. And that should be there because these are the stock screws. So these screws, it's a Phillips, this is obviously a flathead, but what you want to do is you want to take these stock screws out, and it's still got these side screws too, on the sides of the pod. You want to take these out and replace them with the small head, smooth shank screw. And what that gives you is really nice, smooth body float. And that's a super simple trick to get this car to immediately go a little faster, in my opinion. Slot car tuning is an art. It's not a science. Although I know some pretty mad scientists who do a really great job at it. I tend to do kind of formulaic things when I tune a slot car. Once I find something like side-to-side front axle play, which this has a little tiny bit, I always do that on my cars. I always loosen the body up a little bit, make sure the body's nice and free. The third thing I always do now is I replace the screws for the pod with these screws. So that gives you this nice, smooth body float, pod float. And that's really kind of a top tip from me, and a simple thing to do. It's not intimidating. This is not something that you do wrong if you use these screws. You just thread them in so they're snug. You don't want to over tighten the pod screws or the body screws. You screw them in so they're snug, and then you back them off maybe a turn or half a turn. So you get some nice smooth, and you'll notice the difference once those screws are in there. You'll get some nice smooth play in there, and the pod will be able to move up and down and then kind of side to side a little tiny bit as well, especially if you go in and maybe do a tiny little bit of sanding right around the pod to make sure it's just perfectly free, and make sure that there's no flash around the chassis where the chassis meets the pod. That's really something that I personally do to pretty much every car now. I even use these screws on non-slotted cars to get some nice smooth body float. You can do that as well. You can replace the screws and put them all over, the one on the back here for the back body mount, and then up here. You can do that if you wanted to, and replace those. And this is a super simple thing to do. I know gears can be pretty intimidating for someone that's new, and replacing a motor can be super intimidating. And, there's a lot to learn. I mean, you can just work on this car for months and change little things here and there and make it slower and faster and really make it feel good for your driving style. A friend of mine always says, you got to tune the car to your finger, your driving finger. And that's really what you have to do, is find something that you're comfortable with as a racer and not what other people tell you that you should do. Because, I mean, maybe you're not going to like the way they tune a car, and trust me, no one's going to be able to drive one car exactly the same. You know, your finger versus somebody else's, you're not going to like how someone else tunes a car, even if it is fast for them, okay? So the important thing is to find out what you like, but something that I like is a real simple tuning tip, and that's just get some screws. You can get these at any dealer. I don't know where I got these, but I might have gotten them from Slot Car Corner. And these guys, I'm saying, are sponsoring this video because these guys are they're good guys. You want to deal with them. That's a tuning tip from me. If you like the idea of a little bit of tuning tips here and there, let me know. I have a few that I do. I'm not like one of these guys that gets, you know, super crazy about tuning stuff. I just like a car to be nice and smooth. A smooth car for me is a fast car. I can't put a big fast motor, big block motors, and super high torque motors. That's not something that I really enjoy driving. I like a nice, smooth car that I can drive at 8 or 9/10 the whole way around the track. And this little guy right there, this one feels like it's got tons of potential. So anyway, thanks for checking out the latest video, and I appreciate it, and I'll see you soon.